Hello everybody in the chess world. Today I'm bringing you a survey on the modern Benoni snake variation. So we're gonna take this one a little bit slower than the other things I'll show. So first I'll show you what I'm talking about, what it is, the modern Benoni snake variation. Then just brief intro. I think it's important to give you a few advices so you know if you will want to play this or not. And then we'll see all the lines, the main lines. So what is the snake variation in the modern Benoni? Well, if you know the modern Benoni, you'll see that basically, well, this is the modern Benoni, or let's say knight c3, we take it, and then we play, d6, and after e4, g6. So this is super known, super famous. So what is the snake variation? Well, the thing is, in the snake variation, after c5, d5, e6, knight c3, pawn takes, instead of g6, snake variation is this weird bishop on d6, which, I mean, already initially looks kind of weird. What are we doing with the bishop over there? Our d7 pawn is supposed to be on d6. So first, why is it called the snake variation? Well, because as I'm pointing out with the arrows here, well, this bishop usually does some sort of zigzag. So like a serpent, it serpents around. So the idea is, a lot of times we're just going to play bishop on c7, then bishop on a5, and then maybe exchange it for the knight on c3. So, well, you will see how in most of the main lines, by the time black might play bishop on a5, white has already castled. So, yeah, in the main theory, black is always prepared to avoid the exchange of this bishop for the knight on c3. So, you can see that there is a strategical point, in here. So, I mean, it's quite logical. If then we're going to close it up with d6, well, why not exchanging our bad bishop? So, another detail is, well, this is, in a way, has nothing to do with our modern Benoni, because we're never playing g6. I mean, no point in, weakening the squares, dark squares around our king with some g6 if we're not going to have the Fiachetto bishop there. So, let me take out the colors and the arrows, because before showing you the lines, I just a brief pros and cons about this line. So let us start with the cons. So first of all, I think that in general terms, you should have some experience with the normal modern Benoni before playing the snake variation, even if we're not going to have a pawn on g6, and it's going to be different. That's the main difference. So yeah, I will definitely recommend some experience. The second is, well, I wouldn't recommend this for beginners. This is the other thing. I don't think black is playing, on the edge, but I think what is really disencouraging for people, to play this line is that when you see the main lines, you'll see that usually, black, if they want to win the game, they normally have to wait until move, let us say 20, at least, to try and get an advantage, which is not intrinsically so bad. I mean, we're black. It's fine if we just take 15 or 20 minutes to, make the position stable and then try and get an advantage. But I understand why that is a disencouragement for some. Now, for the pros, the first and the main, I actually really like this line. I haven't played this a lot, but I really like it. But the main pro is nobody plays this. It's always a surprise weapon. Even if you're a modern Benoni player and your opponents know that, well, the snake variation is just not expected. So it's always a surprise weapon. And it's actually a pretty good opening. It's just that you have to, learn your way into it. So, okay, now the intro is gone. So let us go into the actual line. So in this position, we're going to see basically three main lines for white. The first will gonna be, the most obvious is e4, just as in the normal modern Benoni. This is the main line. So there's also knight on f3. The knight is, there's no more natural move, than a knight on f3. And who knows, maybe white wants to play with the pawn on e2 or even on e3. There's no need to, already declare our intentions with e4. And the third is, well, the fianchetto. I mean, there are transpositions around this. You could play knight on f3 and then g3. But yeah, of course, playing the fianchetto variation is always normal. So I'll begin with g3 and knight on f3, and then we'll go into the main line e4. So g3, we're going to play castles, bishop on g2, and rook on e8. As in any normal modern Benoni, you usually use, we're going to use this semi-open file for the rook. It's totally natural. So you'll see that initially, I mean, it's not so hard to memorize what to do with black in general terms. But let us say knight on f3. This is what I meant before. We could have started with knight on f3, then playing g3 and bishop on g2. Bishop on c7. Castles. And d6 first. So you can see as well that, well, a lot of times this bishop is just going to play from c7, not even going to, not even, going to a5 to exchange, as I said, for this c3 knight. You're not forced to do that. And, well, knight d2 is a move that, well, before going, I mean, you might think, what is that bishop doing on c7? Of course, maybe one day it'll take this diagonal. But on the other hand, I mean, you can actually really see that, well, a lot of times, I mean, white's pawn break, a lot of them usually is e4 and e5. So, hey, having the bad bishop controlling that pawn break is actually quite interesting and solid. So, and in a particular game, I mean, I saw this knight on d2, again, a typical maneuver for white in any Benoni. The c4 square is vacated. Maybe we'll want to put a knight there and attack here. Once again, this snake bishop on c7 is making that situation more solid for us. So, but still interesting. This we'll see almost in any Benoni. a6, intending the expansion with b5, and immediate reaction by white, a4. I mean, nothing more classical than that. Knight bd7, normal development. The knight finally arrives to, on c4. And it's funny, we can immediately just go into e5 to exchange that. So knight takes, rook takes. Well, this does allow bishop on f4. It's a development move with the winning of a tempo, but we just go back. And again, we're always, you can see already in this first line with g3, there's always this war over the e5 square. This is such an important square for both sides. So let us say, queen c2. We can go h6, and after e4, we'll just knight on g4. Again, this is typical from modern Benonis, even from Budapest Gambit. Well, controlling the e5 square, but also with the idea of maybe, well, this putting another knight on e5. And this position is actually equal even for the computer. Even though if, well, you might think that isn't white better, I don't know, this bishop is yet to be developed. I don't see a problem with that. Or just have the idea of bishop on d7 and knight on e5. Now, going back to our initial snake position, I'd like to see in this knight, well, the possibility of knight on f3. And now I'm not going to show you a game in which, well, white then plays g3 and bishop on g2. That will just transpose into our first line. So this is really interesting because this is Vadim Milov against Vugar Gashimov. I mean, Gashimov was the main player, super GM playing, the modern Benonis, and, well, he also tried this snake variation as in this game. So castles, bishop on g5, rook e8. Again, we always start with this normal castling and rook on e8. These moves are almost automatic every time for black. So as you can see, not so hard to memorize some of the lines and the concepts. And another advantage for this snake variation. So e3, this is something that I said before. Remember, instead of playing e4, well, sometimes white will want to play with the pawn on e2 because they played g3 and bishop on g2, or as in this case, with e3, and that is why Milov, before playing e3, he put the dark square bishop outside of the pawn chain, pinning the knight. Logical play for both sides. Bishop f8. I like this move by Vugar because this proves that, again, we're always, I mean, you don't have to be so dogmatic. It's not like every time this bishop is going to make this snake movement. Well, sometimes it can just go back to a fate. And again, we've vacated the d6 square for a pawn, which is that's going to be our next move. The game followed bishop on d3 and d6. So, in these lines, it's kind of like, well, it would have been more or less the same if we had played bishop on e7 and then bishop on f8. But, okay, we were going to place a rook on e8, so we wouldn't want a bishop on e7. It makes a lot of sense. So castles and knight bd7, normal chess. h3 by Milov, typical a6, a4, as I said, this automatic move. Rook b8. And after rook e1, again, we see this knight on e5, quickly going into that square. And the same as in the other game, because Milov also took and then played bishop on e4. Okay, in this case, the rook was hitting the bishop, and again bishop, and again rook on e8. So this explains what I say on the intro. A lot of times, well, we are already on move 15. Well, a lot of the lines imply that. We're just going to put the knight on e5, exchange it, the rook takes it, it goes back. It takes some moves. But that doesn't take out the fact that we're having a really solid position. And what's the problem if we have to wait until move 20 to try to push for an advantage? And we're still playing good chess and having a good position. The game followed e4. Knight d7, once again, what I said before, the eternal fight for the e5 square. I mean, this is typical. We like to prevent a good e5 pawn break by white. And as I said, fighting in general for the dark squares, maybe placing a knight there, as we saw in the other lines. After Milov's bishop on f1, well, here the first unnatural move by Vugar, and pretty cool one, g5 exclam. I like this move. Again, fighting for the dark squares, just some expansion and winning a tempo over the bishop that went to h2. This also justified this previous h3 by white. And once again, the placement of the knight on the e5 square. In this case, yeah, white wouldn't want to play bishop takes on e5. Yeah, the knight is cool, but the bishop is good as well. So Milov actually played out queen c2. And after bishop g7, I think up to here, I mean, this position is, again, basically equal. This is move 19. And they both had been playing pretty good chess. But knight d1 by Milov was the first kind of dubious move. Okay, that knight is looking for the e3 square, which makes a lot of sense strategically. More than ever now that, black played g5. So there's never going to be a pawn on g6 to prevent, to control this f5 square. So why not making this knight looking at the square? But the thing is, f5 came. I really like this, f5. So really cool move. So, I mean, this is the other drawback of the knight on d1, right? I mean, we cannot even take this pawn. Remember, there's always this knight on f3 check followed by rook takes rook trick. So, yeah, the problem was tactical. Strategically, what Milov was doing was fine, placing a knight on e3. Now that f5 is a weak square. The timing, the tactical things, well, not so much. Now he played knight on e3, but it was a little too late because f4 came. And the position is still pretty dynamic. I mean, it's hard to say who is better, if anyone is better. But in the game after knight on c4, we saw Gashimov, exchanging knights, and bishop on e5. Again, blockade, and the fight for the dark square. Definitely e5 is ours now. If there's one thing that we cannot deny, is that e5 is a square for the black pieces. And in the game after bishop on e2, queen on f6, again, dark squares hitting on b2, rook a b1. Finally, the b5 expansion came, and for the first time, black is better in this position. I mean, Gashimov is actually already slightly better, and this is a really pleasant position. Look at this. As in the other game, we made all of our maneuvers without even developing this light square bishop. So it's kind of like the light square bishop that sometimes we see on the King's Indian. Is a piece that can play well even from his initial square, and it is our good bishop. So again, strategically, I think this snake variation is really interesting. It's hard for white to prevent sometimes black from doing what he wants. But let us go finally into the main line, which this will be the most chaotic one and the most tactical. Let us see this, because e4, which is not only the main move and the most logical, the one that most of us will play, it is what, if you decide to play the snake variation of the modern Benoni, you'll see this e4 on the 6th move more than anything else. So the same as in the other two openings, we're always starting by castles and rook e8. So let us do that, just castles. But let us see now the detail, because bishop d3 is the main move. Again, we're going to answer that with rook on e8. But here, again, tactics start to come, because, well, what about f4? Well, f4 can actually be answered by knight takes on e4. And now a tactical show begins. It is nothing to do with the other lines that were so solid and stuff. Now we're getting into tactics, because after knight takes and rook on e8, the main line here is queen on e2. This I already liked the first time I saw this, because I think it's obvious that if we were to, I don't know, protect the knight with bishop on e3, of course f5 comes, and I mean, black looks already better and recovering health, recovering the piece in a healthy way. But queen e2, in a way, it looks ridiculous, right? Because we're saying, okay, that protects the knight, and it's breaking the pin of our rook and white's king. But hey, a pin over the queen, shouldn't that be, equally as good? Well, not so much. Watch out. You shouldn't play a5 now, because now knight takes on d6, rook takes, bishop takes. Hey, white is practically winning here. We gave out too much material, a rook and two minor pieces for the queen. Still, and I mean, because of this, queen on e2 is the main move. Bishop on f8. Yeah, we just go away. We don't allow white to take our bishop, and yeah, we're ready to play f5. But this does allow a g4. And this is the main move, because g4 is preventing f5. White is saying, okay, I look awful over the e file, but I'm preventing f5. I'm a piece up, so you're gonna have to show something for it. And well, I saw this game, I don't know if this is the main line, but I saw this game with b6, just aiming for bishop on a6. And at the same time, since we have weakened this long diagonal, well, bishop on g2 is a good move, and after bishop on a6, even queen on f3. Because remember, we have to keep controlling, keep defending also the knight. But bishop on c4, it's curious, right? Like, I mean, we're going to just take that pawn. And, well, knight on e2, bishop takes. There is knight on f6 check. Of course, the idea is queen takes on f6 and queen takes d5. And after queen on h4, king d1. This was like a main line that I was watching. I was like, well, really nothing. This e4 line, super tactical. Nothing to do with, knight on f3 or g3 on the 6th move, where this snake Benoni was going to be super strategical and positional. This is tactics and chaos. But yeah, knight on c6, the logical move, protecting the rook and developing the knight. And after bishop on d2, rook e6 with a totally unclear position. This is one that I kind of like with black. I understand that white is still maybe even slightly better objectively, but this is total chaos. Rook d6 is on the cards. White's king has lost the castle in right. This is quite nice, actually. And, well, another alternative, let us see, too, on the 7th move. I show you, here we were looking after castles. We were looking at f4 and knight takes e4. That's what we just looked at. And the main move, bishop on d3. Third alternative will be knight on f3. I don't want to drive you crazy, but I think it's important in any survey, actually, in this sort of lines, to check all the possibilities for white. And once again, rook on e8, the automatic move for us, and hitting on e4. And after bishop on d3, again, the snake bishop just goes to c7 instead of f8. Because with the knight on f3, well, are interested in playing d6, and once again controlling the e5 square or the e5 pawn break for white. So castles d6, h3, a6, a4, normal moves. knight b7, same, and we're back now into strategical ways, same fight, just dark squares, the e5 square. But I like this. After rook on e1, instead of like going, I don't know, knight on e5, knight takes e5 and bishop on e4, we can always do this, knight on f8. And again, black is just waiting. The knight is actually aiming to go to g6. From g6 we will still control the e5 square. We're just waiting. Bishop on f4, knight g6, but bishop on h2. And as in the other lines, knight d7 back. You can see how, again, the same concept. Just making moves that make sure to control e5. We don't care about the fact that this bishop haven't been developed. And let's, I don't know, knight d2, knight d5, even hitting the bishop on d3. Again, this position is equal. I mean, of course, it's playable for both sides, but except these super tactical lines with e4, we get pretty similar positions quite often. So, yeah, if you take this with black, it should be quite easy to play. This is why, again, it surprises me the fact that is not has so little fame, this line. But finally, let us go back. We said e4 main line, castles, bishop on d3 main line instead of f4 or knight on f3. Once again, rook e8, knight g2. Of course, knight on f3 is playable, but it's going to be more similar to the other line. So, interesting to see this knight aiming for the g3 square. Maybe, hey, f5 is still weak. Maybe we're trying to do this. Maybe we're, and it's funny because when I saw this position, because of this reason, I saw, okay, this knight seems to be aiming at f5. I'm sure that now black is going to go back to f8, so then we can play g6 and bishop on g7. Well, not at all. Bishop c7 was recommended instead. That was quite cool. Let us see this. Castles d6, knight g3. a6, a4, knight bd7. Even, allowing knight on f5 in one move, but it wouldn't do much harm. This is the thing. The key square is still e5. So, well, white understood the same thing. So instead of playing knight on f5, they went f4, controlling e5, controlling any possible knight on e5. Maybe one day trying to, well, maybe they'll be able to prepare a good way to try to play e5 themselves. Here we see this bishop on a5, bishop on d2, and black did not take the knight. Black simply played queen on c7, which, as well as developing the queen and adding another force to control e5, we're actually, well, if they let us, we're just going to play c4 next move. So white plays b3. The only problem is that doesn't prevent c4. It actually makes it much more clearly the best move. c4 is the move for us. You can see this is really dynamic, this as well. So a lot of potential in this opening. And black is going to take with the pawn. If they take with the bishop, after knight on b6, you can see this is hanging. This is also hanging. So here, okay, we're going to take everything on c4, at least, at minimum. And black is already better. So that is why they will take it with the pawn, but knight on c5. This is the other typical Benoni thing. We played c4, we vacated the c5 square for our knight, mostly now that white has played before and has disallowed any possible knight on e5. So now let us search for another square. I really like this. Queen c2, bishop on d7. And look at the tactics, because rook a e1, knight takes a4. I mean, rook a1 was definitely a natural move here. Any of us will think about that. Okay, let us try and play f5 one day. e5, I'm sorry, one day. For that rook a1, well, knight takes a4, because the bishop on d2 is hanging. So the snake bishop, black snake bishop, again playing a really important role in the game. So, well, e5. I think this was a real game. I don't have the name of the players, but interesting. e5 takes, knight c4, And after knight takes knight, bishop takes on a5. Queen d4 check, king h1, knight takes g3 check, h takes, and g6. And although the last actions by white were certainly interesting, well, this position, what can I say? Again, even the computer agrees objectively black is better. I mean, look at the pawn chain. From that point of view, is no doubt. Okay, we're development-wise, and if we think about the activity of the pieces, there's obviously some compensation for white, but hey, this looks quite good. So, okay, I'm gonna stop it here. I don't want to, overextend the information, but I think, as you can all see, basically you just have to memorize some of the lines with e4 and f4, because there are big chaos there and tactics. So these lines, and mostly, well, the f4 knight takes on e4 line. This one, you kind of have to know it by heart. But for the rest, really natural play by black. A lot of moves that we can play against almost any variation, always short castle. The rook always goes to e8. We're always fighting for the e5 square, and the snake bishop always, doing quite a good role. So again, I think a really interesting line that I don't know why it isn't more famous. So, well, I hope you like the video. I'll ask you as usual to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And thanks a lot for watching. I will see you next time.